Welcome back to Jersey Matters. I'm Larry Menti. Governor Murphy recently signed legislation that requires you be 18 years of old to be married in the state of New Jersey. It was a tough fight. You might be surprised that there was some strong opposition to that legislation. As a matter of fact, the state's been here before, and Governor Christie vetoed it. The person who was on the forefront, on the front lines of the fight all along is Fraidy Reiss, founder and executive director of Unchained at last. First of all, congratulations.
Thank you.
That you got this done. New Jersey, interestingly enough, is the second state. Delaware was the first. New Jersey had a chance to be the first state, and Governor Christie vetoed the bill. Why?
The reason he said that he conditionally vetoed the bill to end child marriage, which was a really shameful act that he did last year, was he said it wouldn't comport with religious customs in the state of New Jersey. We know that's not the actual reason because there is no religious group that came out against the legislation while it was going through the legislature. And in fact, religious leaders from almost every religion came forward and showed support for the legislation and urged legislators and the governor to pass it. So what seemed clear afterward, and he kind of acknowledged afterward, was that he was lobbied by New Jersey Right to Life. And it later became clear this year that he also was lobbied by one particular religious community in New Jersey, the ultra-Orthodox Jewish community, to veto that bill.
Which is a large and growing community in New Jersey and does have some political power. But so I know why they are against it. The Right to Life people, I don't understand them.
So the Right to Life people came up with this kind of guess. They just decided, not based on any research, because there's no research that has ever shown this, but they just guessed that somehow ending child marriage would increase abortion rates in New Jersey. And based on that, they were lobbying legislators and the governor not to support the legislation.
And so they would say that because if an underage girl gets pregnant, then they could be married. But under this legislation, they could not be married.
Correct.
Is that right?
So their concern is instead they would have an abortion.
Let's talk about some of the real reasons behind not only the legislation, but your participation in being so passionate about this legislation. Much of this is about forced marriages, right? And you agree with that?
Absolutely, because child marriage can so easily be forced marriage. That's why I'm personally passionate about this.
And you were, I don't know if victim's the right word, but you...
Survivor.
You were a survivor of a forced marriage.
Correct, and I was 19, I was not a child when it happened. We know that a forced marriage can happen at any age. But because I am a forced marriage survivor and I know the trauma that's involved in a forced marriage, and because I founded this organization, Unchained at Last, which helps women escape forced marriages, and because so many girls under 18 have reached out to ask for help from Unchained at Last, and I've realized that there's almost nothing we can do to help them. That's why I am so passionate about ending child marriage, because it can so easily be a forced marriage, and a child has almost no recourse in that situation, almost no ability to say no to a marriage before it happens or once she or he is already in it.
Interestingly enough, I think when most people think about forced marriage, they think about the Latter-day Saints. They think about the Mormons, and there's been stories about people being taken out of classrooms in high school because it was their time to be married and they had to go meet their husband. But it goes across a religious spectrum. It's not just the Mormons, and you're living proof of that.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of misunderstanding about forced marriage in the United States. People assuming it doesn't happen here, or happens only within some religious or cultural contexts, or happens only to people of color. I mean, there's so much misunderstanding about forced marriage, or even the way it looks. People think forced marriage means somebody holds a gun to your head. Sure, that's one form of forced marriage, but one of the things we at Unchained at Last try to do is educate the public about what forced marriage looks like, and very often, most cases actually, there is no gun involved. It doesn't have to be, because there are so many other ways. It's usually the family, the parents who are doing this, so many other ways that parents or a family can force, coerce, pressure, defraud an adult or a minor child into a marriage.
Why was it important to you to make it the age 18 rather than just saying there can't be forced marriages?
Well, just so you know, that is my next step. I would like to pass legislation. Right now, forced marriage is a specific crime in only a handful of states, and I would like to change that. But the reason, when we're talking about child marriage, that the reason it's so important to set the age at 18, no exceptions, is because the age of 18 is the age at which children in New Jersey become an adult. And before they become an adult, they cannot take basic steps to protect themselves from a forced marriage. So what we're saying now is you can no longer force a child to marry in New Jersey. And then because we know forced marriage of adults can also happen, that's going to be separate legislation that you will see me again coming forward and pushing for additional legislation.
There's been a lot of religious freedom battles that have made it to the Supreme Court. Do you see this being challenged?
I don't really see this as a religious freedom battle. I mean, Chris Christie tried to make it into a religious freedom battle, but
you don't see it that way, but others might. That's why I'm saying, I mean, do you believe that there's an opposition that may challenge this?
I really don't think that if there is, I don't think it's going to be from the religious community, because again, almost every single religion has come forward to support ending child marriage.
And now you go from New Jersey and you're going to other states. Where are you working on getting legislation now?
Well, our goal is to do this in all 50 states. And what we have seen is that we had tried, before Delaware passed the legislation, we had many defeats. We had more than 20 defeats before we saw that first victory. So what we have seen now is Delaware did it, and that put a lot of pressure on New Jersey to do it, because that means guess where parents are going to take their children in Delaware if they want to force them to marry? They're going to go to New Jersey. So that was very compelling when we told New Jersey legislators, you need to do this now that Delaware did it.
So I assume you're now making that same argument to Pennsylvania. You're making it to New York, and you're making it to Maryland, right?
Check and check and check. Yes, and it's very, and actually we are, in Maryland, the bill has been defeated 3 times in a row already. In New York, a watered down version passed. That was very disappointing to me. But in Pennsylvania, there is very strong legislation that is pending, that as soon as Delaware, it was kind of languishing, this legislation, but as soon as Delaware passed the bill, legislators in Pennsylvania started sitting up and paying attention, and now there's tremendous support, and I do think that will be the next state to end child marriage.
Is the opposition always the same?
No, that's the crazy thing here. It's always an adventure trying to end child marriage, which you would think everybody would support. But in some states, we're getting pushed back from the right. In some states, we're getting pushed back from the left. In some states, it's a specific religious group. In some states, it's someone you just never would have thought of. I mean, it's been a little maddening. And I think that the reason is this is still a very new issue. Before I started yelling about this and pushing this and started this national movement to end child marriage in all 50 states, most people did not even know that child marriage was at the time legal in all 50 states and happening at such an alarming rate. It was our research at Unchained at Last that showed that between 2000 and 2010, here in the US, an estimated 250,000 children were married. Nobody knew that before.
We have to wrap it up, but I wanted to make certain that you get to show your tattoo. You all said with Unchained that you would get a tattoo if it passes in one state. So after Delaware, it's on your wrist? Yeah,
so we had Unchained at Last because for 3 years we were pushing to end child marriage, and in state after state we were just coming up against defeat after defeat. And in this moment of frustration, we all said, when the first state does this, we're all going to get tattoos to celebrate.
So can you show it?
And so finally Delaware passed the legislation, and we all kept our promise, and we all got tattoos with a broken chain theme.
Well, congratulations.
Thank you.
Thank you for being here. I really appreciate it.
Thank you.
Fraidy Reiss, founder and executive director of Unchained at Last. Jersey Matters continues right after this. When Jersey Matters continues, combining towns as a way of reducing property taxes. Will it work? We'll get both sides when Jersey Matters continues.